What would you say if I told you that you could turn used vegetable oil into fuel that you could use in a vehicle? I'm sure that most people think that that's totally crazy and would never work, but it's possible if you use what's called biodiesel. It can be ran in any normal diesel vehicle and requires no modifications to any vehicle. While some people don't think that it's safe to use or practical, it's actually more beneficial and all the benefits outweigh any of the negatives. I will show that biodiesel should be used instead of petroleum-based diesel, since it uses a waste product or a renewable resource such as oil that comes from plants to power a vehicle and is almost efficient as diesel and pollutes the environment less in most cases. I will start by explaining what biodiesel is and what is used to make it. According to the National Biodiesel Board, or NBB, biodiesel is a domestic renewable fuel for diesel's engine that is derived from natural oils like soybean oil and meets the specifications of the American Society for Testing of Materials, or ASTM, specification D6751. ASTM D6751 set the requirements and standards for biodiesel being produced. Biodiesel can be made from many different sources. Waste vegetable oil, or WVO, typically comes from restaurant deep fryers. It is just previously used cooking oil normally. There's raw vegetable oil, or RVO, which comes straight from soybeans, corn, rapeseed, and many other different plants, and it's just oil. It can also come from animal fat from certain animals like alligators or fish, and it can also come from algae. The main ingredients used to make biodiesel are whichever oil is chosen, whether it's the WVO or the RVO. Alcohol, which is normally methanol or ethanol, is sometimes used, and a catalyst, which is normally lye. Now that you know what biodiesel is and what goes into making it, I will show you how efficient it is compared to petroleum-based diesel. While biodiesel may not be as efficient as diesel, it also depends on what the blend is, if 100% biodiesel is used, or if there's a certain blend used with the petroleum. Most engines are fine to run on the 100% biodiesel, but it also depends on their fuel lines and the other rubber components that the fuel comes in contact with. A lot of the older vehicles have a certain type of rubber where the biodiesel will degrade it, and that can go into the engine and hurt it. But a lot of your new vehicles, the manufacturers say that 20% to an 80% blend is okay to run in. Pure biodiesel, or 100% biodiesel, is known as B100 or neat biodiesel. Biodiesel is 20% mixed with 8% petroleum-based diesel, is known as B20. There are all different types of blends, whether it be B2, which would be 2% of your biodiesel mixed with 98% petroleum-based diesel. There's just a lot of different types out there. The only advantage to using the petroleum with the biodiesel is there's all the anti-gelling features of the petroleum-based, whereas the biodiesel doesn't have that. So in the winter it would tend to freeze up, whereas the petroleum-based doesn't. In 2002, the EPA conducted a study with soybean-based B100 biodiesel, showing that it had an energy content of about 119,000 BTUs compared to petroleum-based diesel, which had an energy content of about 130,000 BTUs. So from that study, it showed that the petroleum-based diesel burned hotter, which resulted in more power coming from the engine. That showed that a loss of horsepower and a loss of torque resulted in a loss of fuel economy. The same 2002 study showed that B20 gas had anywhere from a 0.9 to a 2.1% loss in miles per gallon. So in a vehicle that got an average of 20 miles per gallon with regular diesel, with the B20 blend, it would get 19.6 miles per gallon. Now using a B100 blend, it showed that there would be anywhere from a 4.6 to a 10.6% loss in miles per gallon. So that same vehicle that got 20 miles per gallon would then get about 17.9%, or 17.9 miles per gallon. Now that you know that there's a slight loss in efficiency when using biodiesel compared to petroleum-based diesel, I'll show you that biodiesel pollutes less than regular diesel in most areas, which benefits the environment. In the same 2002 EPA study, it showed that pollutants were minimized in 3 out of 4 groups that were tested. Nitrogen oxide was the only one that was up by 2%. Particulate matter was reduced by 10%. Hydrocarbons were reduced by 21%, and carbon monoxide was reduced by 11%. And in 2002, in articles that came from the Western Farm Press, showed that nitrogen oxide was raised by anywhere as much as 10%. Particulate matter was reduced by 47%. Hydrocarbons were reduced by 67%. Carbon monoxide was reduced by 48%. Sulfur emissions were practically eliminated, and greenhouse gases were reduced anywhere from 57 to 86%, and that was all compared to regular diesel. All the statistics they said would kind of matter depending on which blends were used and which certain tests were ran, but it shows that pretty much everything is reduced when using a biodiesel. Studies have also been shown to show how much fossil fuel is needed to create biodiesel. The first one of those was in 1998 and was conducted by the U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and found that for every 1 unit of fossil fuel used, it created 3.2 units of biodiesel. In 2009, there was new information that came from a 2002 study that showed for every 1 unit of fossil fuel, it made 4.5 units of biodiesel. And then in 2011, the University of Idaho and the USDA showed that for every 1 unit of fossil fuel used, it returned 5.5 units. The advances that were made throughout the years are because technology is getting better and advancing all the time, so everything's getting more efficient. While there are some drawbacks to biodiesel, the benefits far outweigh those. You can use old oil from restaurants or new oil from plants that are a renewable resource to make biodiesel. Biodiesel may be slightly less efficient, especially the B100, but the decrease in efficiency isn't that much that it should hinder anyone from using that. The levels of pollutants from biodiesel are also a lot less than regular petroleum-based diesel in most cases. So while it might not affect everybody to think about, hey, I should go out and buy a diesel vehicle and start running this, it might come to where maybe your school district might think about using like a B20 blend, maybe in their school buses. So it might, affect your kids or, your somebody your relatives' kids or your neighbors' kids. It's a lot better for the environment. So it's kind of better for everybody.
Thank you.